In the last 6 or 7 years in the NBA, things have changed pretty dramatically in terms of how the game is played. Gone are the days of patient offense, post-ups, and mid-range jumpers, as the entire league has now embraced a more analytical approach where the more threes you can get up in a single game, the better. This change in gameplay has also created an interesting narrative around this era of NBA basketball. Some of the pioneers of this movement were heavily criticized, and their more finesse approach to the game was labeled soft, and some people said it would never result in a championship. But now, every team that makes the conference finals places in the top 10 in the league in three-point attempts, and this style of play has quickly become the standard in the league rather than the upstart movement that it was a handful of years ago. But what if things changed? What if we were able to reset this change in an extreme way, and suddenly nobody in the NBA could shoot threes at all? Would the current team still reign supreme, or would a new, more old school approach to the game allow other teams to rise to the top? That is what we're going to find out in this video. How would the NBA be affected if the single most emphasized pillar of offense and innovation in basketball over the last 6 or 7 years was made much less effective? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, I decided to do another stupid thing with 2K just to see what happens. Recently, I simulated the NBA playoffs 30 times over to see what happened there, and I also took out every single player that was rated 80 overall or higher and ran a simulation for a single season. In today's video, we're going to be answering the question that so many old school basketball minds have asked for so long: is what would the modern NBA look like if the three-point shot did not exist, if players could not shoot? And as you can see, looking at the roster here, every single player's three-point stats, whether it's open three, contested three, moving three, are all as low as they can possibly go. I can't just take out the three-point line in general, but nobody in the entire league can shoot any better than anybody else. Everybody is awful at shooting. And so some things I'm curious about here that I want to find out is, how is this going to affect teams like Golden State and the Rockets that shoot a ton of threes and have a ton of players that are really good at shooting threes? How is that going to affect them in this simulation? Or maybe will it help some of those teams that aren't as good at shooting threes but are still good teams because they're better at other aspects of the game? And going even further than that, how are the overall stats, the overall numbers impacted by this change, whether it be the stars because of limited spacing, if 2K even accounts for that in simulations, or just overall not being able to make threes and having to get all twos and ones, how that impacts stats not only for stars but for everybody. And then of course, who's going to end up winning the championship? We know based off the video that I recently did simming the NBA playoffs, and in the past as well when I've simulated the regular season, Golden State wins the championship about 2/3 of the time. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did still end up winning it, because they still have a lot of really good players even if they can't shoot. But I'll just be interested to see in this specific simulation who does end up coming out on top in this no threes league. Two teams that I have my eye on as potentially being a little bit more dangerous in this simulation are Oklahoma City, because they don't rely too much on the three-point shot and are very good defensively, and they still have Paul George and Russell Westbrook to get to the rim and get to the free throw line. And then the other side would be the Toronto Raptors, with a player like Kawhi Leonard, his ability to score in the mid-range. Kyle Lowry, the same thing. Could be very tough to deal with in this no threes league. Those are two teams I have my eye on. Let me know down in the comment section below teams that you have your eye on before we start the simulation that you think could do relatively well, or maybe better than they typically would in this no threes league. But with that said, we're just going to go ahead and get through it. I'm going to sim to the All-Star break, and we're going to check out the stats from there. Here we are now at the All-Star game, and one thing I forgot to mention that I was reminded of by the team that I'm technically controlling, the 76ers, I'm not doing anything, everything is on automatic, is big guys. How are big post players going to be changed with this no threes rule? Are they going to be emphasized even more? Are they going to be scoring more points? And I was reminded of that because obviously they have, the Sixers have Joel Embiid, in addition to Ben Simmons, whose biggest weakness is his inability to shoot. And before I even look at the standing, I can tell you just based off the bottom right corner that they are definitely being helped by this change. At 43-15, I'm assuming that's going to be at the top of the Eastern Conference. And that would be correct. By conference, you can see that the Philadelphia 76ers are the 1, followed by the Wizards, Celtics, Bucks, Cavaliers, then the Heat, Hornets, and Pacers. I believe that's 8. That is your top 8 at the All-Star break so far. Worst teams in the league, the Knicks are still awful. They're 12-46. Toronto Raptors are 23-38. So my prediction was awful. I'm assuming there was an injury in there somewhere that caused things to be that awful for Toronto. On the Western Conference side, the Warriors are still very good, 41-16. The New Orleans Pelicans at 41-18. Anthony Davis is probably just absolutely crushing it. The Thunder, so at least half my prediction was a little bit better, 40-17. Then the Rockets, Blazers, Jazz, Kings, and Spurs. The Lakers are all the way down at 26-31. And then actually the Suns have improved a little bit from what they typically would be. But this is all very interesting because it seems, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just making this up. It seems remarkably top heavy in terms of records when you see the top 2 in the East and the top 3 in the West, and then everybody else is just kind of in the middle. I guess, the Celtics and Bucks are a little bit higher, but definitely some surprises to see the Cavs up there. The 76ers have won 15 games in a row, by the way, but we'll go look at some All-Stars and some stats at the All-Star break. So once again, we've got Team LeBron and Team Giannis. Nothing really sticking out too much here. I mean, Mike Conley made his first All-Star team. Rudy Gobert made his first. Ben Simmons made his first. Nikola Vucevic is an All-Star starter. Kevin Durant, not a starter. So not anything crazy out of the ordinary with these All-Stars, but it is just interesting to take a look and see if anything would be too different. You can see, though, the big thing for me on Team Giannis is that Steph is almost out of the picture there in the reserves because the three-point shot has been taken away, but you can see James Harden still a starter as well. So that's pretty interesting. Player stats now, and at first glance, I would say that these per game stats are definitely lower from a scoring and assist standpoint than you would typically see with the three-point shot enabled in 2K. It's not anything too dramatic, but definitely only having 4 guys averaging over 22 points a game. The assist numbers are pretty low as well. And the funny thing is, it's actually just because of the way the tendencies are in 2K, it still is having these players shoot a ton of threes, but they're shooting awful percentages. Dame is shooting 23%, Steph is shooting 23%, James Harden shooting 24%, but they're all still shooting a ton of threes. They just can't shoot very well because I turned everything down in terms of their stats, but their tendencies are still saying shoot a ton of threes. So the field goal percentages for the players at the top of the scoring charts are just absolutely gross. Dame is leading the league in scoring, shooting 34% from the field. And yeah, I don't really think there's been too much of a difference in shot distribution for the big guys. I think, a few of them are, again, averaging less points per game just because they're not making any threes. It's not like, they were great three-point shooters to begin with, guys like Anthony Davis, Embiid, and DeMarcus Cousins, but it's still, if they make one a game, that's still an extra, obviously, 3 points per game that they're missing out on here. All right, that's enough of that. Let's go ahead and sim to the thing that to me is going to be a little bit more interesting, is the end of the season and the playoffs and how all that works out. Here we are now at the end of the season, the awards races, and MVP ended up being Russell Westbrook. He didn't average a triple-double or anything, but that's something I kind of saw coming, not necessarily the MVP, but again, the fact that the Thunder would be relatively good in this simulation just because they don't rely too much on the three-point shot. Rookie of the Year, Luka Doncic with 15, 10, and 6. Zubac is the 6th man of the year. Giannis is the defensive player of the year. Jordan Clarkson is most improved, and Brett Brown is coach of the year. The Sixers continue to go on crazy win streaks. They're 63-19 at the end of the season. All NBA teams aren't that much different, again, just with the absence of Steph. Russ, James Harden, Giannis, LeBron, Anthony Davis is the first team. Steph is second team with John Wall, Paul George, Luka Doncic, All-NBA second team as a rookie, and Nikola Vucevic, All-NBA second team as well. Then third team, Ben Simmons, Damian Lillard, Kevin Durant, DeMar DeRozan, and DeAndre Ayton, again, as a rookie. All-NBA third team. End of season standings 1 through 8 in the East as the Sixers, Wizards, Celtics, Bucks, Heat, Cavs, Bulls, and Pistons. So some teams that typically would do well in this but didn't do well at all. With Toronto Raptors at 30-52, I'm going to take a look and see. They must have had some kind of crazy injury. The Nets 20 games under 500 and out of the playoffs. The Pacers out of the playoffs. The Bulls ended up making the playoffs, as did the Cavs. Those are two teams with 2 of the worst records in the league this season. So I'm interested to see what happened there. In the West, Warriors 61-21, followed by the Thunder, Pelicans, Blazers. The Lakers with a second half turnaround to get to the, what is that, the 5th seed? The Rockets are the 6th, the Jazz are the 7, and the Kings are the 8. But again, very top heavy. 61-60, 55, 44, 41. That's a pretty big drop off. And a lot of teams under 500 in the Western Conference, which is interesting. So looking at the Raptors now and Kawhi's, player log and his player card, he didn't really miss that many games. I mean, Marc Gasol missed a few games, so I don't know what the heck happened to the Toronto Raptors. They were just not good, but I can't imagine them being 20 games under 500 like that in a typical simulation. But here we are. This is your playoffs in the no threes league. Getting into the second round, every single favorite advance to the second round, and we're going to see who our conference finalists are going to be. And once again, the favorites advance. It's going to be Golden State, the 1 seed, versus OKC, the 2, and the 1 versus 2 in the East, which is Philadelphia and Washington. And there you go. In our No Threes League, the finalists are the 76ers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Thunder just swept Golden State in the Western Conference Finals, so I feel a little bit better about completely whiffing on the Raptors prediction, because I did have the Thunder as my team in the West that I thought would do well in this. Now, I didn't expect them to, end up being the 2 seed and sweep Golden State or anything, but here we are in the finals, and we will see what happens. And there you go. In convincing fashion, the Philadelphia 76ers, they only lost, 5 games throughout the entire playoffs. Ben Simmons was the finals MVP, so in our No Threes League, the NBA champion is the Philadelphia 76ers, defeating the Oklahoma City Thunder. And just looking at everything, I think it's pretty clear that this did have a big impact on those teams that shoot a lot of threes, those players that shoot a lot of threes. Golden State was still very good, but they got absolutely pummeled by the Thunder. The Rockets were the 6th seed. And it had some really interesting effects on the standings. Washington being a conference finalist, Cleveland and Chicago both making the playoffs, the Raptors being as far down as they were. And I'll admit that I didn't expect the tendencies thing to kind of throw me the curveball there, where guys are still shooting 12 and 13 threes. That's not necessarily realistic when they're shooting as poorly as they are. So maybe in the future I will do another video on this, and I'll just say, what if, the 3-point line didn't exist? Whereas in this video, I'm just saying, what if players couldn't shoot? So that did throw me a curveball a little bit, but it's still just interesting to see how all the stats worked out, how everything just shifted pretty dramatically when nobody in the NBA could shoot. And there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. If you did like it, then leaving a like rating is a great way to let me know. And like I said, I've done a couple of these 2K kind of videos just looking at some crazy simulations in the last couple of days. So if you haven't seen those, be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.